You ready to record a podcast, or you need to send a few more texts?
I'm finished.
We're back in the lounge, episode 2, the Founderz Lounge. I don't know if you can see the red in your forehead or not. I really want to point this out. If you're watching the video, Evonne's got a red forehead. Why'd you do that?
Why are you talking about it?
Because I knew it'd make you uncomfortable.
No, so convention is 3 weeks away, and so I was scheduling my hair appointment out a little bit further, so I had to do a little touch-up. Well, it's hot here in September in Wilmington, and sweated, and now it dripped down, and I got a red forehead.
You really can't see it. Well, you can a little bit, but it's fine.
Great.
So I thought a good idea today would be to kind of continue where we left off last episode and talk about some of the young and stupid shit that we did in the very beginning that we don't really talk about. We've never really told some of these stories, and I think some of them are pretty damn funny. You know, some of them we talk about during Discovery Days because we try to tell, like, the evolution of the brand and how we got to where we are now with different things like equipment and menus and things like that. But, I mean, if an experienced restaurant person or, you know, a private equity guy would look at us now or look at us then compared to now, that'd be a pretty eye-opening thing to look at.
Yeah, definitely would walk out the door if they saw our operations 10 years ago versus today.
I think the biggest thing that sticks out to me is the original cafe in Bethalto, the Locale Cafe, and the way that you set it up in the very beginning. You basically had like zero restaurant equipment, really. It was all household shit, right?
Yeah, during Discover Day, I always tell everyone, like, restaurant business is hard. So I came from an X-ray tech, and then decided that I was going to open a restaurant. And my whole vision of that was When You Got Mail. I think it was When You Got Mail, right? Or
You've Got Mail?
You've Got Mail, yeah. You've Got Mail, and she's going to her little bookstore, and she's got her basket full of flowers, and she just walks in and everything's cheerful, and they all have talk to her staff, and it's all fun. Well, so I thought when I opened the restaurant, that's how it was going to be, and it was so far from it. First day in, yeah, I didn't even I don't know what they were thinking with me, really, how they even let the health department let me open, because I had all household stuff. I didn't even know about restaurant equipment at the time. So I had a stove. I had regular pots and pans from Target. I had a refrigerator. I didn't even know what a walk-in cooler was. Yeah, I totally didn't even know that we should be serving drinks. So it was, yeah, I don't know how I even didn't get, someone sick. I don't know. It was just a mess.
I mean, honestly, that's was my first impression.
That I was going to get you sick?
No. No, the first time I went there, when Haley introduced us and I went there to eat lunch, and I walked in and I think I ordered a water, and just, you got under the counter, you ducked down, and I'm like, well, where the fuck did she go? And then you pop back up with 2 water bottles, and I'm like, is this motherfucker serving me water out of an igloo cooler? Sure enough.
Yeah.
You served out
water. I had to
go
every day and get ice for the cooler so that the water just would be cold.
But that first cafe setup, now we do it with legitimate, restaurant equipment. But back then it was, we had the little sandwich line, and then there was a table, and what I still think is hilarious, that this will go in a book someday, is we cooked everything on George Foreman grills. If you remember the old George Foreman things that people cook grilled chicken on, we cooked everything on them. Burgers, wraps.
I had 2 of them.
Everything, yeah. We blew through Foreman grills so fast that our parents started buying used ones at yard sales. And then we had what we called the Foreman Boneyard, where we would just blow one out and throw it in the back. And then we'd have a stockpile of like used Foreman grills ready to go in case one burnt up. We did that for a long time. Matter of fact, we never even used a real panini press for that kind of stuff till we moved here to Wilmington.
Yeah, it was Wilmington.
And then next to the Foreman grills, like you said, was a glass top, like convection oven, like a glass convection oven that somebody would put in their house. And like the build your own bowls on our menu now we cook them on a flat top. We steam everything with water. And back then we used to like saute them in skillets, like double fisted. Yeah. And we had like a collection of these skillets, household skillets, and we'd rotate them through the sink. That was literally right next to that. So, and this entire kitchen, picture like a galley kitchen. You know, like two people could not walk through there without touching butts. It was really...
Well, and you couldn't touch the sink and the stove at the same time or you got shocked.
Yeah, I remember that.
So, and I don't even know why that was the deal, but you couldn't like touch both of them at the same time or you would get shocked.
And then there was no walk-in cooler.
No.
At first, because I remember going with you.
I was open 2 weeks, 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah, I remember going with you.
And I didn't realize like how much stuff would be for like the meal plans, you know? So, and I didn't even hire staff. So I didn't even have anybody working with me. It was just me. So I don't know how I thought I was going to take orders and cook at the same, I don't know. It was just, but.
Well, you had Alex and then you had the goth girl, Amanda.
Well, they didn't come until like a week. I had to hire them. Like I opened like on a Wednesday and I had to get, so I was like Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, had to interview people and then they started on Monday.
Yeah, because I remember you telling me about the Alex kid.
Yeah. So, but I went for my first, I didn't even have no one even delivered. I went and got all the ingredients from a restaurant, big supply house.
Restaurant Depot.
So I could pick everything out. Yeah. And then I brought everything back and opened my minivan. I was like, oh my gosh, like this isn't going to fit in the refrigerator. So what am I going to do? And but there wasn't like Google, like we were just getting emails and Facebook and like, so there wasn't any place to like research all this stuff, you know? So anyway, we went to a used restaurant place and they had a walk-in cooler that was like, I don't know where it came from, but it was a dinosaur. So we put 4 walls up and got the condenser and then the girls painted it because it looked so bad. So they ended up painting it purple and like graffiti in it on the outside so it didn't look like a big old monster.
That's when I crawled in your van and sat on a 30-06.
Yeah. Had to protect myself.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean behind the stove was like a household garage refrigerator freezer combo. And that's what we used in the kitchen for over a year. And then the like prep tables were next to that. And then do you remember the Pepsi cooler?
I don't.
That's where we kept like the yogurt and the drinks.
We had yogurt?
The Greek yogurt for the smoothies. Remember our old smoothies?
Smoothies, yeah.
So you would have to like, if somebody ordered a smoothie, you'd have to walk all the way to one side of this galley kitchen, get the yogurt and the fruit out of this cooler, and go all the way back to the other side, put it in the blender cups, blend it up. It was not set up very well.
I don't think I even had a credit card reader. Did anybody pay with credit card? I don't know if I did or not. But I had like an old cash register that I had got like at an auction, and it was like the push button.
Yeah, you had to run the Z reports at the end of the day to balance the drawer.
And I didn't
which
balance
we never
anything.
did.
Yeah. I just like kind of estimated for taxes, and then it just all kind of went in an envelope in a closet.
But that was about it on that first cafe. It was very minimalist, is what I like to describe it. But it worked. And then when we went to the second cafe, when we moved to Edwardsville, and started the second location, do you remember that kitchen?
It was huge.
That thing was big, but it had no AC. The AC in the kitchen was burnt out. Remember that? I would go there and line cook, and I would take 2 T-shirts every day I would work there because I would wind up sweating through one in the summertime by like 1 o'clock, and it would be done. Still used Foreman grills. We would hook up foreman grills. I'm trying to remember. Most of that equipment came with it from the lady that we bought it from.
We paid $10,000 for that second location, and it came with all the tables and chairs, a cooler, which the cooler is how the grab and goes got developed there. And then it had a flat top. We actually had a hood. So when you burn something like,
Yeah, I remember that.
Locale Cafe, the first one, like I didn't have a hood. They didn't make me put a hood in. So it just would be all smoky and we'd open.
And that's where we ordered our very first brand new walk-in. Remember that? We bought the brand new one and stuck it in the middle of the floor there. That was like the first new piece of equipment we ever bought.
Yeah.
Took us forever to get it. I remember that. But you're right, the first grab-and-go cooler, which is a very prominent piece of, or section and pieces of equipment in our new prototype cafes now. The very first one that we ever had was we were just talking about this the other day. It was a dessert. It was like a cake cooler, right?
Yeah, and it rotated.
The display cake coolers that rotate. And I'm trying to remember, the whole thing started with extra meals, right?
Right.
That's how our grab-and-go in the cafe started, was having extra weekly meal plans that people didn't pick up. We put them in that cooler up front and sold them, so we didn't lose them.
Yeah. It actually started in Locale because of a customer, because I had a customer who would come in and he's like, I don't want to take all 10 of my meals. I only want to come in each day and get my meals, because he had like a eating disorder where if he had food in the house, he would eat everything. So he's like, can I come in here each day and grab one? And I was like, oh, okay. And then when we moved, obviously the meal plans, we weren't doing that many because it was coming in. We would text it out on our flip phones and stick figure, like the tallies on that. But then when we moved to the second location, meal plans were a little bit more like we started picking up. Like we were doing I think 500 meals at a time. So it was pretty good.
Yeah, that's another thing that even some of our franchisees currently, I don't think it really registers with them sometimes how far that whole process has came. The entire business model and where it started and where it is now. Like you said, the weekly meal plans used to be distributed to our customers by a flip phone. You and I would sit there and take turns going down names on a list that people would write down on a sign-up sheet, I think is what we had. And they would give us our number. We didn't even get emails then. We got their number, and we would sit there and text it out on a Nokia flip phone where you had to hit the T 3 times or hit the 9 3 times to get a T. And we would just go down the list and cross them off. We would take turns. It would take so long to sit there and text them out.
Because you can only put 10 numbers on one text message.
And then they would text that flip phone back with how many of each meal that they want. We would do stick tallies.
Yeah.
And that's how we calculated it in the very beginning. And then we eventually graduated to an email. We started a business email when we moved to Edwardsville. And
then they would email one by one in. So we'd have to.
So we would have to go through and block off those emails and rifle through each one and write down who ordered what.
We just estimated at that point, and that's when
because
we couldn't go through all of the we couldn't go through all the emails because there had been so many that had came in. So then that's when.
And that eventually grew to where we had so much in our emails, we were using it so much we had to pay for it. Remember that? That was when you had to buy email storage or email whatever. So we eventually did that, and then I think eventually we figured out how to build it when we moved here.
We actually paid for an actual website.
Well, we built
because we didn't even have a website back then.
No, we built a website and a system to be able to calculate it for us. But yeah, that whole process has came night and day from. It's pretty crazy when you think
we're
back.
Getting ready to launch the new website next week, Tuesday, and it was this was a whole new rebuild because this current website that we have, not that anybody can tell, but it has all of our website designers' pieces in there. So it's kind of like it was a hodgepodge.
It's a Frankenstein.
Yeah. So it had the very first website programming in there, the new, the middle ones, and then these guys. And so we had to erase everything and redo all the programming so that we could do some new things with it. So
I'm trying to go through my head as we're talking timeline-wise, but Another crazy story is that burrito line. Do you remember that monster, hellacious piece of equipment?
Yes.
I'm trying to remember how we came up with because we wanted to go back to kind of like a quick serve model.
Yeah.
That's how Local Cafe started. You ordered food at the counter, went and sat down. We brought it out to you. And then when we opened the second locale in Edwardsville, that was full service. We had a wait staff.
Yeah, that was terrible.
So we would cook the food, and then the waiters and waitresses would bring it out, and that was no bueno. That was kind of a pain in the butt. But
yeah.
when we decided we were moving here and starting the new brand, we were like, okay, well, we want to go back to kind of like the Chipotle setup where people come through a line and order their food and go sit down, and we bring it out to them.
And then we found out too, like by having the open concept, because we had already purchased Racine at this point in Wilmington.
The customer interaction piece.
Yeah.
Of it.
So when we went in there, they had a huge window. And so that's where we're like, okay, we're going to do this. Because then we knew that we didn't have to staff that many people, because if we had everything out versus going up and down to get ingredients, one person could cook the line and then one person. So we would reduce our staff.
But this burrito line, picture, I think it was 12 foot long, one solid piece of equipment. So this wasn't multiple pieces. It was one long, solid piece of equipment that had a cool bay in it almost, where you would put the sandwich line inserts all the way around the front and the sides of it, and that was cooled. And then it had 3 steam bins in the middle of it that were hot.
So cold up front and hot in the back.
And when we moved here and had it installed, I remember the guys that installed it had no clue. They'd never seen a piece like that. The health department had never seen a piece like that. It was like a custom thing that we bought from a local place in Edwardsville that they had bought out or bought the equipment from some Tex-Mex place where the guy started multiple locations and then closed, and he had one of these pieces. But, I mean, that piece of equipment, we ran that until
2 or 3 years ago.
I was going to say 2015 or
Poor
2016.
thing had to be cut out.
Excuse me. But yeah, that thing trucked for 10, 12 years. It was a Hummer. Took 9 guys to get it in the door when we moved to Wilmington. Remember the construction guys across the parking lot? Thank God they were standing outside that day that we moved in. The day that we literally pulled up, took the keys, they happened to be standing outside. Thank God. Because you and I would have never gotten that in there. Never. I can't think of any old stories from Locale that we haven't touched on. There's some with Clean Eats that are pretty funny. You want to tell the story how we came up with the name?
Yeah. We had, let's see, I was trying to think. We were coming to Wilmington. So we were on the way drive here. So from Illinois to Wilmington, it's with a couple stops.
17 hours?
17 hours to drive one way. So we had tons of time to do it. But anyway, we came, we're like, okay, we knew that moving past Local Cafe, it was the logo was terrible. It looked like it was supposed to be an apron, but when you did it like on t-shirts without the detail, it looked like a condom. It was just terrible. And then the colors were purple and yellow and green. So it was totally a girl thing, which...
That was all Gracie.
It was. Gracie did like all that. So in the Locale, like people didn't know it was Locale. It was like local. So we knew that we had a lot of work to do for the next name and the next branding. So we wanted to attract men, and make it something that people knew with the one word what it was, So anyway, we was on our way here, and we were in the car, and we wrote down everything that you could think of. Like we were still in the gym rat phase, so it was Fit Fuel, it was Lean.
Well, we had
I still have the paper, so it's like 20 different names. Fit Stop.
It was every fitness cliche name that you can think of for a meal prep company.
It was, and so nothing it wasn't right because I don't know, nothing fit right? So we came to Wilmington, we bought the location here, and then we drove back, and we were doing cardio. We were competing for a show at the time, so both of us had cardio to do. I think you were done though, but we had like one piece of cardio equipment. So when one got off, the other one got on.
No.
What?
Remember the old pipe stepper?
Yeah, we had the pipe stepper. That was in the cafe, wasn't
I'm going
it?
to sidetrack for just a second. So the two pieces of cardio equipment that she's saying that we had to save money to buy this, but we bought a brand new elliptical.
Yeah.
And this is when we finally could afford a 400 square foot apartment.
Yeah, we had just moved in.
One of our customers was a landlord, owned this apartment that was above a quilt shop in Troy, Illinois. The entire apartment was 400 square feet. The bathroom was so small that I couldn't walk through the door straight on. I had to walk in sideways. Remember that? And the shower head was so low that anybody tall that would come over to our house couldn't take a shower, right? I could sit on the toilet, take a shit, and brush my teeth at the same time. It was that condensed and small. But the two pieces of cardio equipment that we had was a brand new elliptical, and then we had a pipe stepper. I call it a pipe stepper because it was made out of pipe from like 74.
I got it at a yard sale. But it did. I mean, we just got rid of it. Like when we moved to this house, we had it up until then. But we had that stepper. It was really condensed, but like we were slow after our lunch rushes. So like from 3 o'clock to 6 o'clock, we had like dead time. Probably should have done marketing or something at that point, but we didn't. I don't know. But anyway, we did cardio in the back of the kitchen because it was hot. So you could get a good sweat going and you could do 30 minutes and knock it out. So it was good. But back to the name. So Clean. So I was on the elliptical machine and I think you were doing something else. And so anyway, I kept on going like clean cheats. Like we were always eating clean, like that's how my mind was processing all this. So I was like, you know what? Like clean eats. And I was like, oh, I think that's it, So so I came out and I was like, hey, I got our name. And you're like, no, I got our name. And I was like, okay, well, like, let's write it down on a piece of paper. So we both wrote our names down, turned it over, and at the same time flipped it. And Clean Eats, we both wrote Clean Eats down, but yours had an S and mine had the Z. And so we're like, oh, we want to be a little bit different, which we've gotten, people don't like when you do that, but we changed it to the Z. So it was Clean Eats. And then, like we did no branding, like, all these companies now will go in and like have a whole brand designer and what the customer thinks when they do this. Seriously, we had no money. So when we bought Racine Drive here, the colors were there. They were red, orange, and green. And we're like, great, we don't have to paint. So we're just going to put our logo up and we made everything match the colors.
Everybody thinks that we like overthought the brand and the colors and everything. We're like, nope, now we don't have to paint.
We didn't have to paint. It was like he had just done like a fresh paint job and we're like, oh my gosh, this looks awesome. And so we left it and designed everything around the colors of the cafe. So
I remember that, yeah. I get chills when I hear that story because I remember doing that. Just flipping the paper over at the same time. We're like, whoa.
Like we both had it.
Cool.
So that was good.
And then we went to, I always get the time screwed up and it really doesn't matter, but the weekend that we spent in Atlantic City, I don't think we were doing anything at the cafe. We couldn't open yet or something to that effect.
No, we came down here to meet the landlord, and to meet Marianne at Blue Moon. Because I was competing in Jen Hendershot's show in Charleston.
That's right.
So Jen had talked us into like meeting because a lot of Wilmington people were competing in this show. And she's like talked us into me doing the figure and you kind of like helping them backstage. Yeah. So we went to Charleston, competed, and then came back through Wilmington just to kind of like, this was like October because we had taken a month off by the time we bought Racing here and went back home, we took 30 days off because we were working 7 days a week and didn't have any time
off. That's when we had Arnold.
Arnold. Then, we just got Arnold and we wanted to spend time with him as a puppy. So anyway, we competed at Charleston and then those of you guys who I'm sure have timeshares, like you just, wherever there's a timeshare available is kind of where you went. So there was a beach resort in Atlantic Beach, which when you Googled it, it looked like it was close to Wilmington. It's nowhere near
It's like
Wilmington.
2 hours north of
It was
here.
like 2 hours. So like, especially when you go 45 miles an hour down the road. But anyway, so we came through here on the way there. So I don't know where your story was going with that.
No, I was just saying, like we said a minute ago, we couldn't afford to go do this brand board and have all this expensive branding stuff done. So the weekend that we spent in Atlantic City is how we came up with our logo and our menus. We did it on like an old Photoshop thing.
Your mom gave me her Photoshop because we didn't have
on these big old brick laptops, and we hunkered down in there for like 3 days.
Came up with the whole menu.
Did our logo, did the menus. We wound up misspelling wasabi crab, which was on our original menu, and it was wasabi crap. But we had like 2,000 of those menus printed.
It was more than 2,000. It was like we got the big discounts, so it was like over 5,000 menus.
Yeah, we couldn't afford to reprint them.
Yeah, so I'm just like,
so
we're
we
going
ran with
it.
it. And then the joke was always, for the first year we were in business, that we were super organic with our crab.
Wasabi crap.
So,
yeah.
But that's how we came up with our first logo and our menu. Was we just hunkered down in that thing and did it. And I remember the first logo was all stretched out.
That was terrible.
It was terrible, but we made it work. And then last one is our first lease. I think we might have touched on that in episode 1, but the first lease that we had when we bought the building from Dave. Nowadays the customary or standard procedure now is you negotiate with a landlord, right? You submit financials, you do all this kind of red tape crap, and we didn't do any of it. We bought the business and then went and met Nick and said, "Hey, we're your new tenants," and he didn't even know what to say, and so. We didn't even negotiate a lease. Thank God. He was just their family's just really good people, and they let us take over from what Dave had, and we've had that same lease now for, it's going to be 10 years here in a few months, and same lease from day one. So thank the stars were in line for us then, but I don't know.
I was thinking when we moved here, do you remember the setting the fire alarm off?
I do.
Chicken. So back, totally not, I don't know, but we cooked chicken on our meal plans out on the grill. And so back there, we just had like an open parking lot so you could cook, right? So when we got to Wilmington, we had a covered patio, and so we had a grill. So we went in there after hours to cook our chicken on the grill, but if you've been to Racine, like there's a big art gallery on the end. So it's an art gallery, and that's kind of like our local artist venue inside. But what was the big? It was the
he was
Dr.
a big Dr. Seuss guy, yeah, and he had like
this huge exhibit.
It was like a $3 million Dr. Seuss exhibit that was on display
in this
that week, and it had been in there. They were closed, obviously, because we were doing this after hours. And I had a whole grill full of chicken on the grill under that covered patio. And I wound up catching the grill on fire, and the whole fire department came, and they were freaking out, thinking that this
it was so bad.
$3 million exhibit was on fire.
That
and
was
it was
like
just
week
me grilling
2
chicken.
us being there, and there's still, if you go to Racine, there's still like burn marks up the bricks.
Oh yeah, they have it covered with a display. So if you take that big metal thing down, there's still burn marks going
burn
up the
marks
wall.
up the wall because we couldn't get them off. So,
well, those are some funny little tidbits from our beginning. Hopefully you got a little bit of a laugh out of it. And I think I'll just close it with this. I mean, everybody thinks that, going into a new venture or a new project or something like that you have to have a plan.
You should, maybe.
That you have to have a business plan, and you have to run all this data and do all of this stuff. And we never did that. Sometimes we still don't do that. And I think the biggest thing that I want to get across to end this episode is that sometimes you just got to do it and fucking figure it out.
You do.
There's a time and place to have a plan and have a really realistic layout and projected plan. I'm not saying that stuff isn't valuable and it's not needed, but some people way overthink that. And I think
over spreadsheet things. I
think that is a huge strength between you and I, is that we've never been afraid to just go and do something. And if it doesn't work, hey, fuck it failed. We'll do something else. So don't ever be afraid to do that. And then it's kind of ending lesson there.
No, the one business that I did write a business plan out was the only business that has failed on me. So yeah, I believe in just, I'm the meme where you jump out of the airplane and then I'll worry about the parachute on the way down. Like didn't even think about that. So jump and then worry.
Agreed. All right, guys. See you next week.